Hello everyone. So in today's video, we're gonna be talking about the tech stack that I use to build my projects. So starting with the first one, the API key. The importance of having the API keys store, I cannot emphasize enough of how important that is. Because if you lost it, you would need either to create a new one, a new API key, or you would need to probably face the consequences. It's something that really helped me out because nowadays I've been putting some of the secrets of my projects in physical. So if I ever need to reuse or share with someone, it's easily stored there. But I think that in physical at least brings that ease of peace. Like if you're using properly, you can know which secrets are you using for development, which secrets are you using for staging, and which ones for production. So I think in physical will be more part of my journey from now on. From the databases, my work experience always went from Postgres, but I also have previously working experience with MongoDB. I really like Postgres. I often use Supabase, but I didn't put Supabase specifically because Supabase is more than a database. Supabase is a backend as a service. So they offer as well file management, authentication, and many other things like real-time connections as well. So I didn't put Supabase specifically because they offer way more than just a PostgreSQL database. But yeah, that's my experience PostgreSQL, and I also have experience with MongoDB. For me, MongoDB is very easy. Is one of the best things I ever learned. And the only downside is actually their pricing. So their pricing is quite expensive, at least from my opinion. So usually what I do, I host it on a VPS such as DigitalOcean or any other one. And then I just basically run my own Docker composer of my MongoDB and use from there. In terms of the backend, I really like using TypeScript. I know that TypeScript can hold you a lot in terms of time because you're inferring the types of everything you're using, variables, classes, functions. But I see a very good side in this is whenever you're developing and you're writing the function and you often forget what should be the specific type you should be returning. And I just think the TypeScript make you, yes, make you slow down, but make you as well be safe of many issues, such as non-null assertion and many other like issues that you would eventually face if you didn't use TypeScript. Another thing I use for my backend is Next.js. Why I use Next.js is basically of the edge functions and serverless functions. I know they're usually not the best because they don't hold state. So like serverless functions are not maybe the best way of going for enterprise production solutions. But I really like for my small projects, just using serverless and edge functions for me is just easier and way more simple than you have to set up like a backend and then you have to run everything. But of course, if I'm running something a little bit more heavy, I need to have some memory, some state. I'll probably use Node.js with Express and then I will host there. My front end, I use Next.js. Why Vercel? I think what Vercel brought to us developers in terms of developer experience is unmatched by anywhere. Before I used to use Netlify, and easily when Vercel came along, I ditched Netlify straight away. I used to have many projects on Netlify. Some of them I transfer, others I just left hanging there because Vercel is that good. And using Next.js, you get everything out of the box from React. So React, you would have to deal with the router handling and also middleware, all these things where it comes out of the box on Next.js. So Next.js, you can do client-side rendering, server-side rendering, route handling, middleware, basically you can do everything and is React. So you have a huge community, a lot of libraries, packages where you can easily just import and use. I use ShadCN as my UI library, but I've seen recently that Radix UI component library that ShadCN is based. So they basically do the primitive components, and ShadCN just use those primitive components and do a little bit more of a styling guide. I noticed that Radix UI is having a very low maintenance and low support. So the contributors of Radix UI are not maintaining the project anymore. So for me, that's a bad thing. So what I'm doing slowly is I'm not migrating my projects. So my current projects still use ShadCN, but any of my new projects will be using Base UI. One because it's free, another because it uses Tailwind CSS, and Tailwind CSS is huge, it's going nowhere anytime soon. So Daisy UI for me just makes sense. So in terms of hosting, I most of the times for my projects I use Next.js, so I use Vercel, and I also use DigitalOcean. So if I need to host a backend, for example, I have this app called OZ Grocery, and I'm fetching everything from the database using Mongo. So on DigitalOcean, I host Mongo. I also host a Node.js using Express, so I can just fetch those specific requests. Apart from that, this is more the miscellaneous part. I For my domain name, I always use Namecheap. I think because they're cheaper a little bit, I personally don't have any preference. That's the one I use back in the days, and I just stick with it. Email, I just use Resend. I don't use anything else. I did. I really try to use Cursor. I think I really like Cursor functionality of you asking and making the questions, and then it brought out everything to you. But I still love the design, the frictionless way of Visual Studio Code. I feel that Cursor is way more, you chat with me and I do the things for you, but most of the times I still need to type the code and do things. So I just like the way Visual Studio Code looks like. It's just a little bit better in terms of the design. I feel that Cursor is a little bit too small, and it often lacks some of the features that Visual Studio Code has because they did some tweaking. Even though they are a fork of VS Code, I feel they tweak a little bit the design. So I see some developers also don't like. For payments, I use Stripe. Why? I don't like their developer experience, but I think they have a good community. And sometimes in software development, having a good community means more than your app being good or not. Because if everyone's talking about your app, everyone is using your app, at least you can find way more examples of using your app rather than not using the app. So I use Stripe just because of that. In terms of authentication, I've used Clerk in the past, and probably I will use again because Clerk is an amazing developer experience. I feel that some people they roast Clerk because Clerk, of course, is a paid option, because of course Clerk is a paid option, but at the same time I don't think people realize that I think they have a restriction where if you go more than 10,000 monthly active users, you start to need to pay. And if you have that amount of users and if you're charging them, you can either hire developers to migrate the whole authentication to another platform such as Nextoff, or you can just pay developers to migrate your whole authentication using Nextoff or whatever you want. But also I think that people don't take the credits like they're free. They give you a very good option to they give you a very good free tier to test it out and have as many users as you want. And out of the box they give a very good solution. So I really like Clerk. I've used as well Next Off because most of the times if I'm doing a very small application, I'm probably doing just a social login. So just putting like Google and letting my users log in using their Google account. So next off as well is very easy and simple. So I like next off as well. So between these two, I would say if you don't want to much development, you can go for Clerk. If you don't mind taking your time to tweak a little bit and set up, next off as well is a very good option. So basically, this is my whole tech stack. I know it's a lot, and probably in the future, I'll be sticking more with specific platforms. So Next.js, TypeScript, Node.js. I want to stick with specific stacks because I feel that if you stick with specific stacks, you eventually get way better at developing with those stacks. And often the most performant code is not the code that has the best features, but the code that the person knows the most. So I will try to be sticking with specific stacks over here and learning way more about them. Apart from that, I think that's all the stacks I use, everything that I personally recommend. Of course, it's your choice to choose like which stacks do you want. I would often recommend just stick with the ones you like, the one you know, the one you feel there's a good experience for you, because in the end of the day, it's all about that, right?